Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Clean Cut Audio, and my name is Tom Kelly. I am an audio engineer, podcaster, and podcast producer, here with you every week to teach you tricks and tips to produce better sounding podcasts and get them done more efficiently. In last week's video, I introduced you all to Soothe2 by oeksound, a really incredible plugin that's great for music and podcast production. It is a dynamic resonance suppressor. If you have not seen part 1 yet, I strongly encourage you to check that out, both in the card above and in the description. And if you're coming back here, welcome. We're going to get into kind of how this plugin works and going over how to set all of your parameters, how to think about it so that you can make it work best for your show. If you're new here and you're not subscribed yet, might as well do it now. If you're here wanting to learn about Soothe2, I've got a lot of other great stuff on the channel that will help you produce better sounding podcasts. But for right now, let's get into it. Part 2, Soothe2. Let's do it. I don't want to waste any time. Let's get right into Pro Tools here, and I'm going to show you how we set up Soothe2. This works with any DAW, but you just you select your plugin. It's a dynamic plugin, which the name Dynamic Resonant Suppressor should give it away. I'm going to go to Soothe2, and this is the screen we get when we first load it up. This is the default. So if you are playing audio and this plugin pops up, it's already going to sound better. This plugin is just magic. It does incredible things. But we need to know really what's all is going on and how to set it up to make it best work for you in your podcast, because there are no presets that work for everyone. You need to acquire some of the knowledge to make this stuff work for you. Every bit of audio is different and it's going to need something different. So if you don't fully understand what all of these knobs and all these buttons do, you're going to kind of just be shooting in the dark, which could lead to some good results, but it's better just to know. So that's what we're doing here today. So the first thing with Soothe2 that I want to show you, we can change the size of the interface. The thing that I love is it goes huge. Like, we can get this thing much bigger than most plugins usually allow you to. It's a little big right now. My camera and my microphone's blocking like half my screen, so I'm going to keep it at large and just work at this size. So I'm going to play some audio from last week's episode on critical listening. If you have not listened to the podcast yet, I encourage you to subscribe to that as well, cleancutaudio.com/podcast, because this plugin is going to require an ability to critically listen to your audio, because how you set it up is going to depend on what you're hearing and what you want to hear, the difference between the two. So I'm going to just hit play at this random spot. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical? Okay. So last week we went over raising these curves here. What that's telling the plugin to do is pay attention to this range and suppress any resonant frequencies in this range here. So it seems like a little counterintuitive, since this plugin is designed to cut frequencies. We're telling it by raising it up, by boosting the curve, how much we're going to allow you to cut by. Now, I already know that my problem is in the low end, so I'm going to get rid of this high pass filter here. I'm going to turn this up on the low end, and we're going to see a couple things. So we have these bands here. We've got a couple options, and when we click on one, if you don't see this bar down here, this little button right here is going to either hide or show that. And each curve is going to have a couple different things. The frequency at which this curve is centered on, which right now is 241 hertz. We have the sensitivity, which is like, kind of think about it as gain, but the opposite for EQ. So this is how much are you going to be allowed to cut these frequencies by. And then the Q, the quality, which either lessens or increases the bandwidth. So this is going to be more sensitive to more frequencies, the lower the Q here. And each of them, you can have different shapes as well, low shelf and a bell. And this, again, just changes what parts of the frequency spectrum the plugin will be sensitive to. I'm usually on a bell. which is the default. So I'm going to leave it there for now. And then we're going to start working our way over on the left side here. So depth is just how much processing this plugin is going to do. This is not much, and this is a lot. And we're going to hear it's very easy to overdo this plugin. So we're just going to keep it at whatever the default was, 3. And let's listen to this bit of audio turning up and down the depth with the focus on the low end frequencies. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best to pick out 10 differences in the audio files. Remember those old, what was it, highlights or highlighter magazines for kids at the dentist? And they had those 2 pictures side by side and they'd be like, there's 8 differences, can you tell? And like, all right, so we're doing a lot of work with the depth knob here. Let's see what happens when we raise and lower our bell curve here as well. So we're going to keep this at the default depth. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical? So what we can see here is by lifting this up to the sensitivity of 12 decibels, we're going to allow it to cut the resonant frequencies that it is finding in this range by 12 decibels. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? So a lot of these parameters in here are going to do slightly similar things. So if you're looking for one effect, you want to play with a couple of different options here. And again, we're still running through them. We also have soft and hard up at the top here. And again, this is the amount of processing. I recommend just staying on soft. So let's listen to the difference between a soft and a hard processor here. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical? So by either raising the bell curve, increasing the depth, or switching from soft to hard, really we're just hitting these resonant frequencies a little bit harder. Each of them has a unique thing that it's doing, and we can get really high level really fast with this, and I'm not really trying to do that to you all. But it's really just a matter of trying to find the sweet spot of the 3 of these things. And again, critical listening is a practice that takes a long time to really get down, but you just want to use your ears and trust what you're hearing on. Is higher depth better or slightly lower? I usually leave mine just on 3 on a soft toggle here and roll with that. The next thing we're going to look at is sharpness. And we can think about this as, with this quality here, we're changing the range from either a very narrow, like pinpoint, very small amount of frequencies, or we're allowing a large range of frequencies to be affected by our depth here. Now, the sharpness is going to be within this range of frequencies, each cut that's happening, how tight or how large will that range be? So let's take a look at very small sharpness. Does the recording environment sound? We're seeing very broad, sweeping adjustments here. And if we turn the sharpness up, does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical? So the sharpness is like more, a higher sharpness is a more like surgical cut, like cutting just a few frequencies rather than a wider range. And this is something you want to be careful with, because if it's not sharp enough, it might be cutting frequencies that it doesn't necessarily need to. But if you get too sharp with these cuts and you get too surgical, it's going to start sounding fake. It's going to sound affected, and we want a natural sound to our podcast. So I usually just shoot for the middle with a lot of this stuff. I keep a pretty tight sharpness, so I'm not losing too much life in my podcast here, in my audio, but I don't want it to be so precise that it sounds artificial. Does the recording environment sound different? And the next thing is the selectivity. So are we going for more, it's similar to sharpness, but it's like, are we going for general shapes around these resonant frequencies, or are we just cutting the resonant frequency? And we can see when we use both of these together, either very aggressively or very broadly, it really changes the shape of the frequencies being cut, which are represented in the bouncing gray bars down here. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? So we can see with a low sharpness and a high selectivity, it almost mimics the same thing as a medium sharpness, medium selectivity in a very low depth. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and it's just like less stuff happening. So each of these parameters, if one of them is off, the whole thing is off. So that's why it's really important to understand what each of these is doing. I'm going to get these back to just a middle ground here, the default, and we're going to look at the attack. If you have watched any of my videos on compression, you know what attack and release mean. Attack means when it identifies a resonant frequency, once the frequency crosses the threshold that determines, okay, it's time to cut this frequency, how long does it wait until the effect engages? And a very fast attack is, for this kind of stuff, it's usually kind of a good thing because we don't want to sound like we're ramping up into a cut. And a release is after the resonant frequency goes back below the threshold, how long until we turn the effect off. So these are like a time-based thing here, and we can play around with these and see how it affects what we're hearing and also what we're seeing in the GUI. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold? So we can see right out of the gate when the attack is fast, the bars are not only bouncing more, so it's cutting more, but it's bouncing a lot faster. And the reason why the speed is determining what is or how much is being cut out is because as these frequencies cross the threshold, if we give the plugin too much time to react, the audio will already dip back below the threshold before the processing engages. So if the attack is too slow, just nothing's going to happen. So I usually keep it not the fastest, but a little bit faster. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best to pick, and let's play with the release. Usually you want kind of a fast release so we don't get this like pumping and in and out sound. I keep this on fast, but we'll play with these parameters as well on release. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best to pick out, so we can see if the release is too slow. Once that resonant frequency is already gone, it's still coming down. That processing is still being done on audio that no longer needs to be processed. So we don't want that to be very slow at all. We want it to kind of be in and out in order to accurately get rid of what resonant frequencies need to get gotten. But if it's too fast, then again, it's going to be too much processing and you might hear the effects of this plugin. And if you've listened to my podcast or you've watched the videos, you know that you don't want to hear plugins working. You want to hear the effects of it, but you don't want to hear it actively working because there's a lot of really weird stuff that happens when like compressors are pumping or equalizers are kind of going out if they're on dynamic mode. We don't want to hear it working. We just want to hear the effects of it. And when the release is too slow, we're going to hear it coming in and out and coming and going. We don't want that effect at all. Let me take a minute to thank my Patreon supporters as we kind of dial in some of these parameters and listen to some more audio. Thank you all so much. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best to pick out 10 differences in the audio files. Remember those old, what was it, highlights or highlighter magazines for kids at the dentist? And they had those two pictures side by side and they'd be like, there's 8 differences. Can you? All right, the next thing we're going to look at is the quality. So we have, if we press the button here, we can see a couple different options. We have oversample. Now this means I'm recording and editing at 48 kilohertz. And if you've listened to my podcast, again, please check it out. Your sample rate determines how accurately frequencies are produced. And lower frequencies, if we oversample our audio, what it's doing is it's taking your 48 kilohertz sample rate and it's multiplying it by 4. So you have much more accuracy in how it's rendering, capturing, identifying, and processing these frequencies. And if we really crank it up on the oversampling, it's going to give us a more accurate low-end response. Now, this is a very CPU intensive plugin. If we look at my signal chain here, it adds over 2,000 samples to our audio, which is significant. Now, I have paid for a 12-core processor on my MacBook Pro, so I'm usually just oversampling because I have the bandwidth. I'm capable of doing it because I've invested in a lot of RAM and very powerful i9 processors and the resolution. Turn it up to ultra. Why not? I can handle it. It's going to make my fan scream pretty loud on my MacBook Pro, but it's going to be a better sounding result. Maybe. Let's listen to the difference. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best to pick out 10 differences in the audio files. Remember those old, what was it, highlights or highlighter magazines for kids at the... It sounds like we get a little bit of low end back when we oversample it 4 times. Maybe you heard that, maybe you didn't. Let me know in the comments which one you think sounds better. Offline. We can do offline processing just so we're not getting all the latency in our session. We can kind of set it up how we like, render it offline rather than in real time. And this is just saying either same as real time, or if we want to render it offline differently, or for example, if we want to real-time processing, not choke our CPUs so much, but offline, screw it, we're going to give ultra settings. So that's in the quality section here, and it will give you a little asterisk, it seems, if the settings differ between real-time and offline, just to let you know you don't want any surprises. Sidechain, that's a topic for a different day. I'm not doing it today. I'm sorry. Mix is going to be the difference between the sound with and without this plugin. So the mix is 100%, meaning the sound you're hearing is 100% processed. What we can do is kind of introduce some of the original signal into the mix as we lower down the affected signal. So we're not getting the full effect. It's kind of lessening the processing of this plugin. We'll take a listen to that. So this is going to be no processing here. It's as good as having this plugin off, and this is just everything. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical? And we can see it kind of reflects it on the GUI, the graphical user interface as well. A couple things we have up here is the trim. So since we are cutting frequencies, the audio is going to be quieter with this plugin on it. So if, say, it's reducing the overall loudness of our signal flow by 2 decibels, we can make that up with the trim button here, and that's called gain staging. We don't want to hear a difference in volume with a plugin on or off. We want it to be the same loudness whether the plugin is running or not, and we can do that by gain staging it with the trim here. Now, probably a good idea. I'm just going to turn it off for now because I'm not really sure. I'm running through this quickly, and I'm not turning it on and off. So a couple more buttons. We have delta and bypass. Last week I talked about delta. It's going to output the difference in the audio. It's going to output the sounds that it is taking out of the signal. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best so that'll just give you an idea of like what is happening with the signal. Rather than trying to hear the difference bypassed, non-bypassed, we can just hit delta, hear the change in the state, and listen to what frequencies it's taking out. And that can also help us determine how we want to set up some of these settings. The next thing is bypass. Now, most other DAWs have another place to hit bypass, but this kind of does it without affecting any latency. Sometimes you'll get a click if you're turning plugins on and off that cause a lot of latency. So when you're turning it on and off as it's playing, it's like skipping all of these samples, or it's going back all of these samples, and it causes these like clicks and stuff in the signal. So hitting bypass within the plugin itself, it isn't turning all of that off, so you're not going to get these skips in the signal. Does the recording environment sound different? It's a more seamless transition in and out of the plugin. A couple other things we have here. Undo and redo, really helpful if you're really trying to dial this in. Say, I'm trying to really find where I want this low end to be taken out of. Does the recording, and I move it like this, does the recording, you know what, I don't like that more than the last one. Rather than trying to remember where that was, you can just hit undo, and we're back to that original state. And the same thing, redo, we can go back a few steps, and that's a really, really nice thing to have here. Another very important aspect of this plugin is the A/B section. So this way, if you're trying to really hone in on the sound you're looking for, I'm going to, let's see, if you hit the A to B, what it's going to do is the screen you're seeing here, it's going to make the B section. So now these are both identical. And now we can do something like, I want to hear what it sounds like without this on, and maybe this a little bit lower. Now we have our original selection, which is B, and then A. So we can compare the two quickly without moving stuff around and trying to remember where they were, or undo, redo, all this kind of stuff. We can quickly switch back and forth to hear which one we think sounds better, and then possibly make a new A/B comparison to keep inching closer and closer to the sound you're looking for. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? Try your best. So what else do we have here? We can listen to just an individual band. Does the recording environment sound different? Is one signal vibrant and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison? And the listen button is allowing you to listen to the change that's happening within that range. So there's a couple other things in here. There's some pretty good options that, are self-explanatory if you look at the description here. It has a really good manual that goes along with this plugin, and what version you're on. The manual is a really nice PDF, 30 pages that has a quick start, just kind of gives you some of the basics, and we'll probably do a much more in-depth, much more detailed overview of what I'm trying to do in this video. But it's a really cool plugin. It's got a lot of really cool presets too. So there's de-honk is a good one. If you've, again, listened to my podcast, there's a lot of honk in this region here, and it's trying to get rid of a little bit of that. Does the recording environment sound different? I've got a lot of honk in my vocals and lively while the other one sounds cold and clinical in comparison. Try your best to pick out, and for each of these presets, we can then continue to change it and see what everything sounds like and try to hone in on a sound that's really good to us. I hope you found this video helpful. There's so much involved in this plugin. I could have gone on for an hour and really dug down a lot deeper, but the best thing you can do is download this plugin on a 20-day free trial. You can play with this. Absolutely every feature is included in the free trial. Get your hands on it yourself, because 5 minutes of playing with this plugin is going to do a lot better than an hour of me talking about it. I promise you. I'll have a link in the description of where you can find this plugin. They're not paying me to say this stuff. I'm not getting a commission. They did hook me up with the plugin, but I am absolutely loving this thing. It's doing so much work for me. It's allowing me to very quickly remove frequencies that I don't find pleasing in my voice. That's a factor of me being so close to the microphone and my environment, my voice itself. It does so much heavy lifting so quickly, so effortlessly, that I really have a hard time imagining going back to a world before I had this plugin. It is absolutely amazing. It's not cheap. It is one of the more expensive plugins that I own. 200 euros is, or 200 pounds. It's about $240 US dollars. It's what this thing's cost, but it's going to save you a ton of time. It's so worth it. I can't recommend it enough. Truly. I really do want to thank oeksound for offering me the license of this plugin. I did approach them about it and they were happy to hook it up. Very happy to make these videos. I'm sure I'll make more in the future of just kind of playing around with it. But again, 20-day free trial. You can't beat that. I would check it out. Link in the description. Thank you all so much. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and make sure to ring that bell so that you never miss a video. New ones come out every week. New episodes of my podcast come out every Thursday. You can check that out at cleancutaudio.com/podcast. And I've got some very exciting announcements for the future of how you can very, very quickly get a lot better at your audio. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay tuned and be the first to find out about that. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you would like to support the channel, you can head to patreon.com/cleancutaudio. Any bit helps, but I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. I love you and I value you all. Please stay safe. Please love each other. Please treat each other with care and respect. Please. We all need it right now. I love you all. See you next week. Bye.